Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a presentation of the CCA League here on IPL. My name is Kyo, and I am joined by the Shiny Hunter, Zach. Zach, how are you doing?
Good, man. I'm super excited to kind of bounce around the different divisions of CCA. Last week was a ton of fun. We had the complimentary sort of CCA tradition, full best of 7. I'm hoping we get the same today. Very interesting story here unfolding in, I believe, Group 3 of Division 4 as we get closer and closer to playoffs.
Yeah, this is a very complicated story to say the least. So, two teams that we are going to be having here today, UCSD Esports Navy, of course, from UC San Diego, and PSU Goobers from Pennsylvania State as well, or Penn State. Zach, before we went live, we were having to digest the standings because it is a convoluted mess, to say the least. But the best way to sum it up to our TOs, by the way, today is that from DRF, of course, loser very likely out of the playoff picture here. UCSD Esports Navy 2-2 to start, and I'm actually having to quickly dig up. Yes, the PSU Goobers 2-1, so record-wise very similar, but of course, to no understatement, must win.
Yeah, kind of to go off of that, we have BSU, Bridgewater State. They are sort of the incumbent. They're the ones who are expected sort of 99% to make it into the playoffs here. And then we have sort of a three-way fight, of which two teams that we're watching today are within that sort of potential tiebreaker scenario. So this one, really, really important for both teams, and especially for UCSD Navy. They have just played an absolute gauntlet today. They've done 3 of their tournament matches, this being the 3rd out of 3. They entered today 0-2 and then have won 2 straight, only dropping 1 game total, winning 4-0 and 4-1. So they have put themselves back into contention, and Keon, from what I've heard, have already scrimmed a little bit these PSU Goobers, and it's been pretty close, all things considered.
Yup, they scrimmed each other earlier on. They scrimmed, and they have, of course, their scrims. They're very, very close and almost as equal as they could be. So this is gonna be, hopefully, delivers out in a full 7, like you and I would be rooting for here. So that's kind of where we're at. So you mentioned before, 3rd game of 3 here in the gauntlet. They're about to load in, so we'll get to the maps here. These are week 2 maps, by the way. So we actually will start teeing things off here on, I believe, yes, the Museum Clam Blitz map. We take a look at the weapons. I'll give you the primer here. UCSD Esports Navy, actually going to be on the blue color side. Of course, PSU Goobers is orange. And anything that strikes out to you weapon-wise here, Zach, to get us started?
Yeah, so as we
never mind, we'll hold that thought.
Yeah, we'll have a little bit more time to talk about things here. So as we were talking about beforehand, this is going to be a really important sort of tiebreaker match. These two teams have played each other very close, and we're looking at the map list here, starting kind of traditionally in the middle of things. We'll get a little bit wacky, a little bit wild with Rainmaker Marlin, for example, and then we'll kind of come back into a more sense of normalcy if we need, for example, games 6 and 7. But starting out here with Clam Blitz on Museum de Alfoncito, pretty common map and mode combination. Control of mid, of course, paramount to getting success, but a lot of teams, with a map like this one and with Clam Blitz in general, just kind of skirmish here and there, but are really just kind of all over the place on this map, finding clams where they need to. And last week we talked about two distinct strategies of trying to approach Clam Blitz in this way. The first being, as soon as you get 8, try and create an opening with whatever specials you have to get in and just come away, even with just the 80 points, the initial break with the power clam if you need to, or the more metered approach where you look for maybe 2 folks that have 7 out of 8 and then jump to the person who is already able to get that first power clam in, and then basically have a second or even third at the ready. So really interested to see. I saw Kyon some pretty interesting weapons to start out with, and I can't wait to see how they're actually utilized.
I think from the glimpse that we saw earlier was a charcoal decab, which is normally when we think decab, we think mid decab. You got the big bubble, almost a solid pick. One of the few times I see charcoal that has the inkjet and I believe one of the suction bombs, if I'm not mistaken, there as well. And then they also have the variant of the bamboozler. This will hopefully paint the better story. PSU Goobers now on the orange color side. So there we go. We got that all sorted out. UCSD Esports Navy on the other side. So they actually decided, okay, never mind. They're gonna get away from the charcoal decaf. It turned out to be a complete myth. So we look at these assortment of weapons here. Anything this time that strikes out to you, Zach?
Yeah, the blob blobber is definitely interesting. On something like Clam Blitz, you don't really think about passive ink control or turf control that much, but the ink storm can be really nice to have. We see the wall come up. They are just able to get the sprinkler out. Not really much of an offensive weapon. We see the nice splat there by the hero Splatana, and a full wipeout forced by the PSU Goobers against UCSD. They are scrambling with their 15 power clams in Kiln. An early fantastic start for them.
Early fantastic start. Now let's see if they can build more out of this one. If you get to see the aptly named Sonic trying to zoom their way through, but not able to find a pick, and it's only just gonna be the 1+2 push there, Zach. I was kind of thinking maybe there could have been a lot more that we could have saw from that push, but PSU Goobers is only limited just a tiny bit. But at least it was a good first punch there from what PSU Goobers showed. So now we go over to UCSD Esports Navy. They were able to stifle the push just a little bit more. And I'm still intrigued, just like you were with the Blobblobber pick. We just don't normally see that often. I want to see how this gets delivered here, as both teams now back to gathering clams.
Yeah, and to me, that first minute makes sense. I think PSU's comp is a lot more hyper offensive. They have the 52, they have the tri-strike to get space, they have the Flingza to put on the 10 missiles if they need to, but also have that one-shot potential. And they rounded out, of course, with the aforementioned hero Splatana that we were talking about. Nova on the opposite side of things going to be coming out with the killer whale. They're going to try and combat this UCSD push. They have 11 clams at the ready. Their power clam all the way back, so not much space. Nova creating a lot here, getting the final splat there onto Viv. So even with the power clam spotted out there, Bean going to be forced to back up an early start once again. And this seems to be the MO of PSU. They're going to be leading things off with that zip caster. They have the 10 missiles coming out as well. Nova unfortunately going to go down. One of the only offensive edges that UCSD has in that range blast. They're going to be doing some work to create a 2-down situation.
And it's just the 2-down that UCSD Esports Navy were able to take advantage of. They got 2 clams ready to go. Nice long-range shot from Just Awful. They're able to take out Nokia from that side. And Sonic was just having to defend that power clam. I think we're just trying to move a little bit forward, but it is going to get stalled there by J13 from PSU Goobers. So all that being said and done, they're still waiting just a tiny bit longer for this push to work out. Viv and UCSD Esports Navy still playing this one very passively, looking for the right opportunity to strike. Hopefully the blah shots will give them the space to work with, as it looks like there's just members thrown across the board, left and right, and right then and there, UCSD Esports Navy, they still can't quite make it to their base. I think still waiting for the perfect chance to strike here, Zach.
Yeah, I'm sort of looking at what the win condition might be here for UCSD as we see a quick trade out. The blob going to be getting the 52, trading out with the Neo Splash. I think maybe you want to definitely have the tactical cooler up, which they are going to be using right now. They have the Range Blaster special and, of course, the Zip Caster from the Octobrush at the ready. So this is going to be the all-in right now from UCSD. The Zip Caster to counter, though, coming out from PSU. And it's going to be a relative trade that's going to force an effective wipeout, though. This is the opportunity that UCSD has been looking for. They do break the barricade. They're holding on to 8 total power claims. Puka going all the way back for a few more. They have the curling bomb as well. They just barely get through, barely get the lead. And despite going 3 down, a minute and a half left on the board, it's a little bit of a back and forth, but nice fight back from UCSD.
I was wondering because I just saw the missed power clam toss that doesn't quite cash in, but they were able to recover that one effectively, and that power clam toss is kind of pivotal at the stage. Around a minute and 15 left to go, excuse me, and you kind of get your idea where you are offense wise. One power clam only takes you down to 67. You're gonna need probably 2 power clams at the very least to get this push started. 10 of missiles being used now, trying to scatter out UCSD Esports Navy, who now has to reset their defenses right now. There's the 2 power clams. Make that 3 power clams. This could be an offensive explosion here if they can take advantage, but they're are going to lose the Stamper right then and there, Zach, and they're going to lose the 52 as well, so they're going to have to slow down just a bit.
And that's the natural trade-off. You get 3 power claims too early, and 3 of your 4 team members are now spotted. That makes it easier for a more patient team composition like UCSD to know exactly who to focus first, and they did a fantastic job of that, taking map control in mid here very quickly with 30 seconds left to go. They have the wave breaker out, just not enough range there. Nova doing a good job of staying just outside of that Octobrush, and they flip things on its head here, helping to create a 3-down situation. That's an effective delayed wipe, as the blob is also going to go down. Now Nova setting up here with the power clam. They're going to try and lead things in with the tri-strike. They get blocked out temporarily by the suction bomb, but time not on their side. They have just enough power clams here to keep things interesting as we head into overtime.
Heading into OT, and the suction bomb explodes in front to cause the double there, and now though the defense is just focused on making sure that power clam disappears right from their very eyes, and the pick to Nokia to make sure they don't get the chance to pick it up. And I was wondering, was this the right time to strike? That one little suction bomb ultimately made the difference there. Zach, UCSD Esports Navy continuing their gauntlet run with another win.
Yeah, when you talk about making a difference there, that was 1 power clam away from being just a 1 clam difference. Would have been 74-71. They sneak the power clam in, make it 51, and make it 1 win on the board here in a hotly contested match. And I think both teams really stuck to their strategies as we sort of foresaw them. I think PSU definitely had flashes of brilliance with their sort of more offensive-minded composition here. PSU playing the defensive and more passive game that's usually very helpful on Clam Blitz, or a mode that is slower in nature like Clam Blitz tends to be. You don't often see the bum rushes or the crazy amount of progress on the objective unless there is a complete mismatch between the 2 teams. Maybe as we get into some of the more hyper offensive oriented, Rainmaker, I don't think we're going to see until game 4. So unfortunate for PSU. That could be one of their better modes, just looking at these 2 teams matched up. But other than the power clam going in, relatively close, playing each other back and forth. I'm very interested to see how this looks going into game 2. And of course, as we saw at the beginning, the weapon compositional changes. It looks like both of these teams have pretty deep pockets.
Deep pockets is exactly where I was going to go. We kind of saw one weapon, then they decided, all right, we're going to retreat, actually get ourselves reset again. So I'm kind of curious, what other weapons do they have in their arsenal, or what they have available, because that was pretty fun to watch, and I love the back and forth that we saw. But we saw from UCSD Esports Navy waiting for the right time to strike and see if this was enough of a path to clear. You go from Clam Blitz to now this zones map, and Umami ruined zones map that it's 2 zones. Now you really need to focus on those 2 zones, get both of them secured, then move forward. So you kind of don't have the chance to wait for the perfect time. You got to get your offenses set right now, and I'm actually going to be really intrigued to see what weapons they're going to switch over to, if they're going to choose to do so.
Yeah, it feels like one of the only diagonally oriented maps that we have, because there's these 2 sort of sunken in court areas that don't really get used too often unless you're very far back into your spawn. You have sort of the main ramp going out of your spawn. Of course, you mentioned the 2 zones and the obstacle in the middle separating them, and then the same on the opposite side of things. So it's basically right to left from your spawn over to theirs, of course, to the 2 zones. And you're going to want to pick weapons that can be effective at range. This is why a lot of folks prefer pencil. You have a nice sort of cylindrical overlook on this map as we get into game number 2 here. And let's see, we only saw 1 tactical or weapon between the 2 teams. We are going to see at least 1 coming up from PSU. I believe that was the Tri-Nouveau. And on the opposite side of things, they're going to be sticking with the same composition. No changes, Keon, that I can detect.
Yeah, no changes that I see either. So they're gonna just stick with this blah blobber. Now this kind of makes a little bit more sense when we put a little bit of thought into this blah blobber pick that UCSD Esports Navy has. So I'm wondering to see how PSU Goobers now switching over to this trying to evolve very aggressive cooler weapon. I like to say, as the Tri-Slosher likes to play up close, see how they can make this work out. Other thing that I also kind of notice is a lot of the weapons very close to mid range from PSU Goobers. You got the Neo Splash, you got the basically the T-Tech in this case, so the Order T-Tech with that there as well. So they can dish out a lot of pain in close range, but the problem is they gotta stay alive when doing so. There's that because UCSD Esports Navy, they get the 3 down and now they can start pushing further.
Yeah, it may have just been the spectator cam bias there, but we were watching the Hero Brush. They're doing some absolute work. It has just enough range to make sure it can paint both zones from atop that little figure there. They was able to get a double splat before getting taken down. Now, finally, PSU able to take zone control away, at least temporarily, not really taking more than a point themselves. J13 backed off and runs into the wave breaker there. That's going to damage them heavily. A nice up and close blast there from the range blaster. We saw how effective that was in game number 1, forcing a 3-down situation against PSU. And UCSD, despite the minor penalty, they're going to pick up pretty closely where they left off.
Yeah, only just a small bump in the road, only losing just a mere point, and not much penalty that they had to get through in the next step. So they did lose the auto brush, but they did grab that cooler from earlier. So quick respawns are in play. Now they're kind of setting up 3 members into this full zones defense setup where they're gonna try to run around the zones. That just gives PSU Goober a chance to just move forward and play very aggressively. Buka is down. Nova secures the wipeout for PSU Goobers, and Zach, PSU Goobers, has a chance to strike.
Yeah, this is exactly what you want if you're PSU. They go with a very similar hyper offensive composition here. The Neo Splash is that sort of nice mix between having a good supporting angle, but also dishing out some serious damage. Sonic is exactly where you would expect a Tri-Devo to be, very up close and personal while building up a ton of ink to get out that tacticaler. Of course, UCSD had one of their own. Is Buka on the edit going to be moving forward here, trying to take control of the zone, but it's too late, at least for now, or not. They actually stop control. Tied at 42, and tie goes to the team that had control first. So UCSD barely maintaining control of the lead until that moment. PSU finally, after a hotly contested mid-range here, going to go to 40 and claim the lead for themselves.
Claim the lead for themselves. It was kind of an interesting triple we saw from both of the teams here. PSU and UCSD were very close, neck and neck, trying to fight for each part of the zone. You have to capture both, of course, to get through some of those points. PSU Goobers, they did lose 3 on their own. Now it's UCSD. They just have to chunk down some of these small penalty points, but the way they are positioned is still trying to defend the zone and then look for the opportunity to strike. This is going to be an auto brush. Zoom in here. Z-Beam picks up 1. That is J13 down with the Neo Splash there, as UCSD does regain lead. We're down to 25 points remaining. Is there going to be a response from PSU Goobers? Losing the Flings, though, that's 1 member down. This might give UCSD a chance to move. Yes, they will, and the respawns aren't going to favor them. That's going to be the game very likely here. And Zach, UCSD Esports Navy improves to 2-0 to resume the set.
Yeah, more emphatic at the end there. The Octobrush, the Hero Brush in this case, almost perfectly equipped to dodge the Tenet missiles there. It almost felt like they had Zipcaster exactly when they were getting targeted by those Tenet missiles, which allowed them even to do some offensive damage, but mainly to dodge the shots that were coming in from the Tenet missile. Made it very easy to move forward. They did a great job of creating space for their range blaster, who is very reliant on other painting weapons to be able to move around where they want to and have the potential to do that one-shot splat, or even just get the indirect chip damage around some of those corners, because there are some boxes and things that make it pretty nice for a blaster with a decent amount of range like the range blaster to get around there and do some big damage. And finally, when they got into the middle of the map, that's exactly where the heavy edit wants to be. They can hide behind those boxes while having a nice overview of the rest of the map. It's just basically downhill from there, except for that cylindrical overlook we were talking about. So very well executed there. Felt more in UCSD's favor in game 2 than it was in game 1. A little bit closer on clams there, but still some back and forth. We had that fun moment in the low 40s there where they were trading the lead back and forth. But once they took it, UCSD never really looking back from that point.
That was the one moment there where UCSD never looked back, and I want to talk about UCSD Esports Navy real quick before we move on to this Mako Tower Control map here. This is, we mentioned before earlier in the cast, the third game the third game in a row they are playing today here in the CCA league. So we here in the CCA like to call it the big run, where we get to see a team run through as many games as they can that they can get scheduled, and this is the third of three. I personally was wondering if any of that fatigue was settling in. It turns out not. UCSD Esports Navy is definitely rolling right now. Yes, it is very back and forth, but right now that second win, they're looking for their third here in this Mako TC map, and for PSU Goobers, I feel like there's just few quick plays that they need to make, and they could made all the difference. And I'm curious to see if it happens here.
Yeah, it seems like for UCSD, a team for whom morale, they like it to be high. They like to have, again, that sort of patience. Very good against a team like PSU, who they've scrimmed very closely against. And we've sort of described what it's going to take. There's no guarantee, even if UCSD wins this match, that everything's going to go their way and it's going to open up a spot for them in the playoffs. I think only just the top two from each group is going to make it into the playoffs. So they know that even with, you know, an emphatic victory here, and they want it to be as emphatic as possible in case it does go to a tiebreaker that looks at, for example, map differential. So with PSU coming into this one, they have a lot going for them, but UCSD, having played 2 matches already, if they're not fatigued, then they've got tons of momentum. They're super warm from having played 2 matches already. They're 2-0 on the day. As mentioned previously, have only dropped 1 game in total, and that includes, as we've seen here, the 2 that they've played, bringing them up to a total of 10-1 on the day. A super impressive comeback after a rougher start to their season.
Yeah, they started the season 0-2 here as well. Now, PSU Goobers 2-1, no slouches either coming into this one. They also have some hopes that they want to have by winning this game today, and they're actually playing, again, a team where UCSD Esports Navy, their booth was potentially exhausted. They had to play 2 games from earlier, so maybe this could be the time to start wearing them down as well. So and you mentioned one of the things is they got their morale in spades. Other things that they've done pretty decently is obviously limit some of their enemy approach options, which they did in a few key moments throughout the past 2 games. They would need to keep up that momentum in the third one. Now, the strong offense, stronger defense, their second key point here. It's been, I would like to say, a little up and down at sorts, because there were a lot of fun moments we saw in games 1 and 2. So if they are able to clamp that down in games 3 and 4, obviously it will be the recipe for the sweep that they're looking for. So so we move on to game 3, which actually just well timed right then and there. PSU Goobers is going to, let's see what changes they're going to opt to make here. From what I see, there's the Zimmy actually making its appearance, and UCSD Esports Navy, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, no interest from UCSD Navy in changing their composition at all. On the opposite side of things, you called out B-Wall there with the Zimmy. You can see the 3 mains of run speed. That's going to be the first instance of the big bubbler that we're going to see come out. They have the hero shot as well, alongside the octo shot. So the double shot composition in tandem with bringing back that flings a roller. So they're still going to have the missiles. It's still going to do its job of clearing out, in this case, the tower, the objective. Quick buildup of the bubbler here from B-Wall on the Zimmy. 1 backed off already, not going to be able to get off the rest of those shots. And now it looks like UCSD doing a great job of claiming mid. No chance to even use the big bubbler on the objective. Z-Beam once again doing a great job of, this time for this map, guarding the drop down with an effective range. And already UCSD at checkpoint number 1.
Already at checkpoint number 1. Now the question is, can they break through? They did lose their auto brush, but in this case, it doesn't seem to quite slow them down until the next follow-up pick. They're onto the range blaster, and it is going to force a tower to reset, so PSU is able to at least stall them out for just a little bit longer. But now they got to find some of the fights that they're looking for, and the thing that PSU Goobers just only slightly struggling about is just addressing UCSD's offense. Their Z-Beam doing their part with the Alpha Brush. The Blob Lobber seems to be has been there to help provide some of the backup paints, and the range blasters has also been a big issue. So there needs to be that response from PSU Goobers that needs to show up here soon. The first checkpoint is cleared, and the Zimmy actually pops bubble at a pretty timely point, but they are going to go down anyway. B-Wall drops, and it is just a 1-for-1 trade. UCSD Esports Navy still slow going, but all things considered here, Zach, it's the first checkpoint that's cleared.
Yeah, so this is looking much better now for PSU. They've got 2 down, basically forced against the Octobrush, which was giving them some trouble. They do lose their Octo shot, so no Tri-Strike going to be coming out. They lose a couple more as well, so the main points of their team and Nokia nowhere to go. They absolutely get locked down, so delayed wipe in what looked like PSU's best chance to push forward here. Now just awful having the Wavebreaker, using it proactively to try and catch anybody out. They find
Oh
J13
man.
and just as quickly find a couple of indirects. They get the assist as well. And already PSU looking like they're being backed into a corner.
Backed into the corner the same way in a sec, and two more members drop, trying to defend their base from the tower push that was about to happen, and the all-important sec checkpoint is cleared, and things are about to go out of control here for Penn State. The Zuka needs to land and find picks right now as they're getting ran out of the building here by Zebin, who is able to find a few more picks. Three members have dropped. It's just Nokia, the only one alive, just having to find any paint towards the zone. The bombs are being chucked into this mix, but Zebin using the zip caster is gonna finally get shut down, and Viv is able to get the pick there as well, along with just awful. But that should be a stop here for Penn State, at least for a little while. But boy howdy here, Zach. Penn State is at 8-point range. Actually might be able to take this one all the way home, so it was only a small bump in the road once again. And UCSD Esports Navy is rolling with a 3-0 start.
Yeah, we talked about momentum before we got into this game. It feels like in every game they're getting better and better, figuring out PSU strategies, even when they have compositional changes that we see come through. We had the hero shot come out. I only really saw, and again, maybe SpecCam bias, but only really saw one Trizuka coming out that looked like it could have had an impact on the objective. The Tri-Strikes, didn't really see too many of them from the Octo shot, and they felt like they were getting shut down pretty commonly while building up their specials. Didn't really have time to make coordinated use of them, which is what you typically like. Maybe you want to coordinate the missiles coming out from your Flingza with something like the Inkzuka to call out where the enemy is going to be. So you don't really get those opportunities. You don't really have the best parts of your kit, arguably. And when they got up to 8, the only thing stopping UCSD from capping that one earlier was a couple of clutch bombs that came through. That splat bomb just barely made it over the tower and forced the range blaster back off the tower. They were able to follow that up with a suction bomb, threaten the KO if they get back on top of the tower. So that's the only way PSU really was able to clamber back a little bit, but it was short-lived. UCSD now one game away from the sweep and one game away from putting themselves in great position to try and claim that number 2 playoff spot.
Yeah, the number 2 playoff spot could be in their grasp if they are able to take this one all the way home here in this 4th map there. And for PSU Goobers, I mean, there's 2 players there that they gotta start looking out for. Zebin has just delivered a lot for UCSD front line so far, and just off of finding timely picks. So it feels like those 2 members have been able to lead up the offense, and of course the huge support from Viv and UCSD, especially with the Blobber and the Headed, has been huge. But if they did, so what we saw from the first few rounds, kind of almost tournament very viable maps, to say the least. We are going to say tournament viable because we're seeing Marlin Airport Rainmaker. We got to get the elephant out of the room here soon. The map that both teams were inevitably going to have to run into at some point during the set, and normally don't see Marlin Airport Rainmaker here, Zach, so this is going to be intriguing to watch.
Yeah, what we called out was that this could potentially be PSU's best chance to get back in this one. And if they're going to need to reverse sweep, it's going to need to happen with a little bit of help, and they're going to get it, I think, from this map and mode combination. But they're up against a lot of momentum from UCSD. They've been very confident in the loadout that they've brought, despite it being a little bit unconventional, you know, seeing a blob in there. Let's see what they've brought. B-Wall going to be going over to the pencil now. So very much so going a little bit more in the meta direction. They're still going to have the hero shot and the octo shot, rounding things out with Sonic on that hero stamper with the Zipcaster. On the opposite side of things, no changes from UCSD, trying to establish dominance early. Looks like they do break the Rainmaker shield already. It goes in PSU's favor, but they also lose the first player as the octo shot goes down.
The thing that Penn State has going for them in terms of their weapons on paper is the amount of paint output that it has. It doesn't really matter if you have a lot of paint output, though, as you see there, Zach, because that is a wipeout, and this could also get out of control in a hurry. The initial fight being lost is going to be brutal for Penn State if they want to have a chance to come back. As Viv now on Rainmaker duty, everybody is moving forward with abandonment as 2 members have dropped. Now the biggest obstacle is just getting to the podium for the finish. And Zach, I think it's safe to say UCSD didn't seem to be phased too much.
No, not phased at all, carrying that momentum forward. They even caught the Tri-Strike user in the midst of the animation, and they were able to pretty easily chunk them down. Gets to 33, but now PSU going to be trying to play some defense. They do get 2. Sonic popping the Zipcaster, maybe a bit proactively using it early here, not really able to follow that up too much. They are going to try and be aggressive with it and find something at the end there, but nothing doing. But effectively, all they wanted to do was try and reset things, get some sort of sense of normalcy back into their game. Not over quite yet. 33, not necessarily going to be the death sentence, and now they're going to pick up the Rainmakers. They do have the tactical buff at the ready here, and look how close it is just to get to this one checkpoint. The pedestal already broken. Maybe that's all PSU needs. One clean look. They do get wiped out though, so UCSD, despite that, holding strong.
Yeah, but what Penn State can at least have is a checkpoint clear, so that does give them almost a chance to collect themselves. Well, we may need to see how this is going to get ruled here, because we do unfortunately see a DC in the mix, and it looks like, so again, we're not effectively, we can't judge too much by the way this is going to go, but I think they're playing on, so they're going to just see what they can do from this stage. But I think it's safe to say though, Zach, a perma one down situation, not really ideal for a sweep, but UCSD Esports team, from what we see right now, are just playing this one out.
Yeah, you take the breaks where you can get them, and you don't ask how, you just ask how many. Yep. And the wins they need is 4, and this is potentially a route to getting the one that they need to start what they'll need to have for a reverse sweep if they want to come away the victors of this one. So Sonic going to be carrying it forward. Still, UCSD, the remaining 3 members, playing some stalwart defense here, just off with getting an indirect shot, not quite finishing off Sonic. They're going to go down in the meantime. The Inkstorm not really going to stop too much, although it will get the knockout there. They forced the wipe out the last 2 members of PSU, looking for their chance to finish thing off. D-Wall going to be throwing down the Tacticooler and seeing if they can dunk the Rainmaker. Not quite even getting the lead, but still plenty of time left on the board for this 4v3.
What's kind of fascinating is still being able to slow that one down. So UCSD Esports team is still very strong out of this mix. As I am actually trying to gather which weapon got eliminated out of the picture, it was actually Z-Beam. So they're stuck with a bunch of midline and backline weapons, so they can't really move forward. As all things considered, that is going to be the weapon. Effectively, this is just GG, and I think UCSD Esports, maybe Zach, from at least reading outside looking in, is like, okay, we could probably just take one loss right now. It's just gonna be another bump in the road. So if the results do hold, it's gonna be a 3-1. UCSD Esports maybe not gonna get the sweep, but I think they'll be okay with that for now.
Yeah, you maybe went from seeing if they're going to play the last 3 games out of CCA courtesy and tradition to, PSU has a chance in this thing. They've gotten the win. It doesn't matter to them how they get it. They're just looking to see what improvements and what they gained from that game 4. Of course, we figured that it could lend itself more closely just because of how relatively close, especially that first checkpoint is, and how aggression can really help with that composition. But they change up a little bit. Of course, they go a little bit more meta, as we mentioned, with the pencil there. So they have the tactical cooler to counter the heavy edit that we've seen in now all 4 games from UCSD. But we're going to have to move on to see what we hope at least will be back to an even 4v4 match here for UCSD, getting that 4th player back despite the DC. Game 5 going to be in Clam Blitz again. So going back to Clam Blitz, this time for Barnacle and Dime. So another one that we see somewhat regularly. It's not as regular, say, as a map like Hagglefish Market, which we would see in Game 6 if needed, but definitely one where, similar in a way to Umami, the sort of low elevations, the relatively unchanged landscape allows you some pretty nice sight lines into where folks are setting up, even without the indicator where somebody has a power clamp.
That's actually, and I would even say it's an uncommon map mode there, because you normally would see Barnacle and Dime clamps. I feel like it's one of those maps where it feels like it's been replaced with some more common ones, such as Game 1 here. Museum Clamps has been one of the maps we get to see a lot. So hey, it's making its appearance once again here. And again, we will brush aside the unfortunate perma 1 down scenario. They're losing Z-Beam there, so the thing they're going to try to get them back in and see and get themselves rebooted just a little bit. But obviously, Penn State PSU Goobers, that is, will. Hey, take the win for what it's worth. You just have to win 3 more, 1 game at a time, and you're back to this map mode where it's a lot more common. Obviously, not as common as Marlon. Obviously, not as rare as that Marlon Rainmaker map we saw last one. So maybe a chance for Penn State to get their bearings back.
Yeah, and based on how the first half of that Game 4 went, no indication that UCSD really needs to change anything about their composition. I definitely think the onus still lies on Pennsylvania State here to see if they can find a composition that's going to work for them, agnostic of what map and mode they're playing. Although if you can play to it, it certainly helps. And Sonic going to be making the main switch over that we're going to see here, going over to the Mint Decavitator with that suction bomb and big bubbler. So maybe in lieu of something like we had in Splatoon 2 with the bubble blower, maybe trying to set that up in front of the barricade to see if they can get that first pop of the shield for both teams, really setting up pretty early. PSU getting the jump early. They had 10. They lose half of those by dropping their Octo Shot, but it's a 1-for-1 trade, and we're seeing trades come out early and often here in the middle portion of this map.
One of the other things that I also noticed as well, on top of the Mint Decap, we see Nokia being subbed in here with the Flingza. So now they got 10 of missiles also ready. So you got kind of almost two mid lines, or one pseudo front and mid line with the mid decap and the Octo Shot plus the Hero Shot as well. So there is still some paint, but they gotta find the picks that they need. There are 7 clans, but for what the headed has 5 of them, and we'll need 1 more for that power clan to spawn in. And it looks like it's not gonna be there quite yet, but at the very least, UCSD Esports maybe can assert control of this area. There they go. They got 1 clam in. That's gonna be the push started off. Will there be follow-up? The answer is yes. Just 1 additional small clam added into the mix, and it's down to just the 77 points remaining. They're gonna pick up 3 more. Actually throwing in 1 more again. I do see that as well, and they are keeping this push alive, all things considered, but this could be stalled out just now. The answer is yes, and Zach, it's just 1+3 in for the push, but still a good start for UCSD Esports Navy.
Yeah, big shout out to our spec cam operator there. I think Buka was the player to watch. You could see that they had great map knowledge there. It looked like they had some trouble, but were able to find that ink rail, get away. They were trying to find that last clam so that they could create the power clam, and then doing a great job of kind of dodging and diving around to make sure that they could survive while finding some power clams. But now PSU looking to be in a great position. They're going to fire off their second tri-strike in the last 30 or so seconds with 17 clams at the ready. Sonic does have the power clam, so they get spotted out. J13 trying to be one of the knights to protect the president, if you will, to stop things going through. They do not get the power clam in. They have a second one in the back that also goes down. Can they pick them back up? It's back to a 2v2 situation. Viv kind of playing Overlook here with this blob, trying to see if they can get any of these power clams down, but stalled out at the moment here. So UCSD still doing a great job early here and trying to play defense with this lead. Of course, so much time left on the clock that you don't want to be too defensive, but PSU threatening, and they're finally going to get this first power clam in. We'll see if there's any follow-up.
The question is, will there be additional follow-up? It looks like it isn't going to be there quite yet. They do hold on to just 1 clam. The patience is going to be there, recognizing, okay, we can't get the second push started. Let's just get ourselves reoriented at this stage and see if we can find a chance to strike once again. At least you cut it down to 80 points. I mean, I know it's a one-and-done push. They would love to get more on the board, but hey, cut the deficit a little bit, and that might help your cause. But Z-Bean has all the right deals. That was a quad, by the way, Zach. That was a quad from Z-Bean, and Z-Bean just allowed this team to get another push started. That is unreal. There, as we are able to see a little bit more come in. Z-Bean, as we are ironing out some difficulties there, I think yes, when I said Z-Bean is able to get the quad. They are able to get 4 members in, and that is going to be Sonic holding on defenses there. 3 members did drop by the end, and it will just be two members going down from UCSD Esports. Maybe the quad effectively there, all things considered. So I'm wondering to see how this is all playing out. So it looks like we are still ironing out some tech side and our side. So you get to hear me for a little bit longer, as you guys are wondering. So welcome to the show. We are still trying to we are still looking to see if Penn State themselves can get a push started. They got 3 members down from UCSD Esports Navy. Nova just needs to get one clamp in. Actually, somebody just got it intercepted. They break it to home to 70 points remaining. Now, Nova and Sonic has basically gotten all the clamps in. They got 3 members that have dropped. 45 seconds left, so UCSD Esports may be able to hold on defense. So if you break that through, you do get the 1 power clam back into the mix. but now they just gotta get 1 plus a little bit more there. And I gotta see, is Zach still with us? Can you
Yeah,
hear
we're
us
still
right
with us
now?
here.
Yes.
Apologies for that. Last 30 seconds, you're going to be coming through. Still a very hotly contested one. The Trizuka not going to be able to come out in the meantime there, but UCSD doing a great job effectively forcing a 3-down situation here. Now Z-Beam trying to lead things up. They have 17 power clams despite holding onto the lead just as insurance to try and capitalize on this one. They're going to get the pick against Nova. Looking for more here in the final 5 seconds. Do they have the range? They get the assist, and that may just do it. Sonic getting the final splat, and it does lead to overtime, but PSU not in too great a position. They're going to grab onto the clam. They have one more power clam at the ready, but can they even make it to the other side of the map? 2v2 once again. It feels like it's been the story of this entire match, blazing a path forward with the tri-strike. Do they have enough time? They throw it in, but the game stops. Not quite enough, just running out of time, and I think that's going to do it. UCSD Esports Navy, even with the DC, capitalizing on their opportunities, and they win the set 4-1.
Well, welcome back to the show here, Zach. You saw the thing drop there as well, just to get you caught up there. Zebin got a quad, by the way, and it was so powerful enough. It had to knock you. It had to knock you off the air, so we were able to get you back for the finish. And we kind of saw the push kind of going back down to the 61 points remaining that Penn State had. We're able to get a few wins, but they weren't able to get some of the pushes continuing, which is kind of similar to what we saw from that game 1. So now we fast forward to where you got caught up in. What I saw there was Penn State actually had that free clam as well from back at base when the push actually started. So that gave them the OT. They just got to move forward, and on top of that, not only did time run out, they missed cashing in on the barricade. The power clam that they just chucked missed it a little bit to the right. So it was even more unfortunate, a little bit salt in the wound with the with the goal coming out. So that was well played by UCSD Esports Navy. They improved to 3-2, and by the way, undefeated in this big run gauntlet that they had today. So they didn't really feel like they were exhausted at all.
No, it shows just how effective they can be. I mean, it felt like they were warmed up, they were ready to go, only dropping 2 games on the day. I'm not sure if the other game that they did drop outside of the set had to do anything with DC related, or if it was just a pure flat loss, but looking very emphatic, as we mentioned, looked better and better as the day went on, doing very well. It looks like we will continue on, I believe, with the CCA tradition of leading us in to a complimentary game 6 and game 7, so that we see the full suite of these teams playing each other. We'll have to see how PSU can come together as the couple last maps here that we have available. I believe we're going to Zones Hagglefish next, so a much more Kion traditional tournament oriented map and mode combination.
This is a little bit more traditional here for game number 6. Everybody, a lot of teams, a lot of players in Collegiate and obviously Comp will be very familiar with this map mode being played. And obviously for Penn State, the set has been lost, so you can definitely use the next 2 to get yourselves rebooted here. So for Penn State, the focus now is at this stage is trying to see if you can end this one off on a high note. They got one more set that they need to play. I'm right now just currently digging that up while we're getting this one through here, Zach. And I think it is going to be, yes, it is going to be a matchup against the Coyotes Black, which, if I am not mistaken, is a 1-3 record group that they have coming up later. So try to see if you can use that. Use what you can build off of this game to see if you can move on to forward. And I think, Zach, it's safe to say if they want to give us a complimentary game 6, UCSD Esports Navy is like, all right, screw it, let's just party it up with 3 juniors.
More than anything, I respect that Viv does not want to swap off the blob. They're like, no, this is my weapon. It's on my banner, my splash tag there. I do not want to go away. And they've actually taken the first flip of the zone here, doing a great job. They do get wiped out. Not much range, it turns out, on the Splattershot Junior there. PSU definitely hanging on with some of the weapons that they've been running through the first 5 matches, and maybe even wanting to show that they're not one to be toyed with, despite the way that UCSD is kind of celebrating their victory.
You know what? And you know what? I gotta respect what Penn State is trying to do. At least try to play this one and end it off on a high note. And I know UCSD Esports maybe not just the celebration. It's the end. This was their last set for the season, so why not cap it off with the celebration that you can definitely have. And for Penn State Goobers West, they are still trying to combat against triple bubbles, by the way, as well. Something underrated from the three junior side. They're gonna have to go through many defenses, but not much slaying power here from the UCSD Esports Navy. They are gonna be able to wrestle back zone all said. Excuse me, there, Zach, as well. They're able to get through, and they're gonna be able to penalty points here soon.
Yeah, I mean, if the juniors can get to the zone, they're very adept painting weapons. So it's definitely a scary composition if they can get set up where they want to and with the specials that they want to. As you mentioned, just having constant bubbles to try and chew through. Not exactly a fun proposition there, getting the trade. It's only one player left standing. There is the pain on the zone coming out from the Inkstorm, but it's just not quite enough. And Nokia being the beacon for the three players that did go down to come back to. UCSD having to come back from spawn the hard way, trying to lead the charge with a flurry of splat bombs, but time running out on them. They do have a couple of bubbles at the ready here. Are they going to be able to put them on the zone? Nokia rolling around there. They do lose the zone. One bubble going out. Do they have the second? Don't need a second. Big penalty given over to PSU, and UCSD claiming the zone back.
You know, the worst feeling in the world is having to go through a defensive 3 bubbles, and then you're like, wait, we can't even paint over the zone. Let's just forget that anything that we're trying to do is even gonna work. So I gotta respect them trying to retreat. Like, let's just get rid of the bubbles. Now we just can get the zones back, and then just try to fight themselves a little bit further. And again, I still gotta give respect to what was it, Viv, who has the blah blah. We're still wanting to just keep playing the weapon. Hey, if you don't want to play the junior, I mean, by all means, don't even play the junior. You may as well play with the weapon that you've been doing very well on so far. You have a lone Inkstone that's just trying to paint over it. So PSU Goobers just trying to stop the onslaught of 3 juniors in a bubble. And they're finally, and what sounds like they are picking up this assignment. There is going to be delayed wipe. This should be Penn State at least taking over the complimentary game 6.
Yeah, much more of a sort of dual environment that we're seeing here. These players kind of combating each other at the front of the zone. That is going to do it. So PSU holding strong to their morals. Speaking of morals, I got to respect this. We just talked about Viv there for saying, nope, I'm not going to swap. Definitely want to hang on to my baby, my blah blobber here. And some back and forth, but overall, PSU getting the knockout. They're going to take our for funsies, if you will, game 6, and we still have one match left on the table here. We're going to round things off with tower control on Undertow Spillway. Again, not something completely uncommon, much more I would think of a Rainmaker map usually, but still fun to take a look at.
Yeah, this is a map, but I felt like got popular in the early stages, and then when we discovered more tower control maps, it kind of just fell out of favor here. So it's gone from common early in the early times into, okay, well, it's very uncommon. We won't normally see this a lot. So hey, this is gonna be a fun map that both teams will get to play on. Again, for those who are tuning in, the set was finished by UCSD Esports Navy on a 4-1 officially. Penn State winning the complimentary for funsies game 6. So this game 7, of course, I'm sure Penn State just wants to end this one on a high note here, and obviously get some practice for their 5th set that they are gonna have to play in. I'm gonna be real here, Zach. This is now I'm having to play the game of, is UCSD gonna celebrate with something more sillier than ever, or are they gonna just stick to what they know? I feel like it's gonna be less serious and trying to see what other celebrations they can dish out.
Yeah, well, and for PSU, as you mentioned, they've still got a road ahead of them. They've still got some time to play through. They've still got some regular season to sort of decide on, and we have a very interesting back and forth in terms of, are we going to see these multiple 3-2 finishes, the 3-way tie coming out between UCSD Navy, PSU Goobers, and UNM Esports. So still lots of that to find out. I'm super interested to see which team ends up coming out of it. There will be 2 teams that did very well in the season, even potentially having winning records, that are going to be left disappointed as far as not making the playoffs. But let's take a look here. They are going to be sticking with what they know. Sonic just going over to the Tri-Slosher, and they're going to flip things on its head. 3 blobs and 1 junior instead of 3 juniors and 1 blob.
You know, there is someone suspect over there out of the blob lava reigns, because Just Awful is not going vanilla, just going to be going with the blob with the crack in there. So now you got both varieties on the board. And this time, what was it? Buka is going to stick to their guns as the junior, which I don't know if they were really playing the junior the entire time, or they're just wanting to dish that out for funsies. So yeah, UCSD Esports Navy Zed, they are just going to continue the celebration train, and I can't blame them. It's the last game of the season for them. They await their fate with the other two teams, by the way, that are playing here, as we do get to see two members dropping from UCSD Esports Navy. Penn State is moving on, but to your point, the way Division 4 Group 3 is gonna round out is gonna be really interesting by the end of the season.
Yeah, and you talk about we've talked about weapons that we don't really see in competitive play very often. How about sub weapons? We don't really get to see the angle shooter coming up very often as well. We get to see that nice bomb kill there by Nova, getting a couple down, so showing their prowess with the flick of the wrist there. They are also looking to win the 1v1 up close. Just Awful, as you mentioned, on the blob. Deco going to be winning that one. They have the Kraken at the ready, and they're going to pop it now near the tower, getting one in PSU J13, looking for the second on Nokia, and they're going to find it. So helping things come through. It's not quite the same Kraken that we got to see in Splatoon 1, but in scenarios like that one, it's still pretty darn good.
It's actually, it is a very good usage of all of defenses there as well, just using that to just clear everybody out of the tower. And yeah, as you know, I remember vividly remembering the Splatoon 1 days. It's not as strong back then, but if you're able to take advantage of it now here in Splatoon 3, it will go very well for them, as I think Penn State may have solved the riddle of the 3 blobs here, as they're able to clear through the 3rd checkpoint. And now they're actually, nope, they didn't quite solve the riddle quite yet. I spoke too soon there, Zach, as that is the stop there from UCSD Esports Navy. So 3 blobs are able to stop this tower from pushing through 12 punch rain. Penn State will need to have another chance at it. But hey, let's see what UCSD can do with 3 blobs. 1 bubble has been popped.
Yeah, J13, one of the last holdouts that we saw there, playing very aggressively with a hero shot, had the Trizuka. Nice amount of range to sort of stay back and fight these blobs. The bubbles from it can actually go quite far. Buka actually getting into the wrong spot there as they get caught by the final ink strike. Nova had already gone down by that point. An early pop of the Kraken there. It actually ends with being able to help take out the Tri-Nouveau. And now UCSD looking for their shot. They get to the 2nd checkpoint and nobody really close to contest them. Nova not even approaching so much as they're able to get through it completely. Viv gonna go down. Z-Beam gonna be followed up. So that's a full wipeout on the other side of things. Getting past the halfway mark though, with 3 blobs and a junior, with, you know, stacking your specials and coordination, anything is possible.
That is definitely true. Anything very much. Okay, was that a bomb? That was definitely a bomb. I think that might have gone too there. Yes, and I think that was the 3rd that we just saw. That I think was another quad on the board there as well. But this is going to be coming from the hands of Nova, and the respawns aren't going to really favor UCSD Esports Navy. There's one lone blob trying to defend the tower with all their might. Nova just caps it off there, and Zach, Penn State will at least bring this one home to a high note for them, winning the last 2. Of course, a little disappointment they weren't able to win the set, but hey, take the for fun win, take the complimentary wins, not necessarily for fun, but complimentary wins, and see what you can build off of it.
Yeah, I think both teams come away with something here. I think for UCSD Navy, very strong showing, not just in this set, but in all 3 sets. They turn around what was an 0-2 season, flip it on its head, and now you have a winning record, and you put yourself in a great position to contend for that final playoff spot. For PSU Goobers, you get to blow off a little bit of steam in games 6 and 7. You get to win those. You get to go through, and you also claimed the 1 victory. You made sure it was not a sweep by UCSD Esports Navy. You spoiled that fun at least a little bit. And now you just play the waiting game until your next match, because as we mentioned, PSU Goobers not done on their regular season. UNM Esports also waiting to see how things are going to shake out in their favor. So definitely interesting. PSU Grizz Taco, of course, the far and away favorite, coming out here with a very strong record of 4-0 right now, at 1st place in Group 3 of Division 4 here in Season 6 of the CCA League. But very fun overall. A couple of teams like Bridgewater State, hadn't really heard of them, but UCSD and PSU, 2 pretty big schools. Very fun to see them go head to head.
Yeah, and just get the capper on this one here, Zach. So you mentioned before BSU Bridgewater State University, which we both never didn't quite hear of until before we went live today. 4-0 record. So UNM Esports would be the closest team, I believe, with the way the record's set up. Because yeah, Penn State went 2-2, to UCSD went 3-2. UNM Esports is the next one up on the list at this stage to see if they can clinch the second the second one for themselves. Again, just looking at the records as is, and yeah, because UNM has yet to play a couple teams, and the remaining opponent for PSU Goobers was A-State Black of, I'm quickly digging that up right now, Arkansas State University. UNM has basically everything in their hands right now to secure the second seed for themselves. So there's a lot of uncertainty with the way this group's gonna play out. I'm outside looking in. I'm curious to see how that group's gonna finish here, because it looked really competitive from what we saw. So, Zach, that was a lot of fun doing that Division 4 matchup there. We got your first experience with the big run, watching a college team play through the gauntlet. So, and you got to watch them do the capper. So we're gonna try to wrap it up here. Where can the people find you first?
Yeah, so on Twitter and Blue Sky at Shining Hunter Zach. Definitely been fun casting the CCA League. Cannot wait for the playoffs to start. Really get the stakes escalated for these teams and look at the very best across all of these divisions here in Season 6 to see what they can do when the stakes really get that high cranked up.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, you can find me as well, Keon2570 Blue Sky, and the occasional Twitch, of course, as well. So one last thing, if you are going to MomoCon as well, I hope to see you there as well. And by the way, shout outs to our producer Ryan taking us through, also with some great spec cam shots that we saw of some players there. So huge shout outs to them. But we're gonna wrap it up here with Zach, myself, and Ryan. We here to say have a good rest of your week. We'll see you guys next week. Same, pretty much close